The year is 2018. Pokemon Brick Bronze is thriving, as a huge community and around 10,000 people always playing the game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for the time on Roblox, this is a lot of players. Then, Pokemon happens to hear of this game's success and couldn't have this big of a competitor, or more respectably, a threat to their games. Considering this game was gaining serious traction, bringing in more views on YouTube than most Pokemon games at the time, and even worse, it was free compared to the Pokemon games which had a price tag of roughly $50. April 21st, 2018 hits, and Pokemon does what they were always inevitably going to do, and they took down and threatened to sue Pokemon Brick Bronze. The community is in pieces and have no idea what they're going to play now. Their favourite Roblox game, and on top of that their favourite Pokemon game that they invested all of their time into, made memories on, and possibly even spent large amounts of Robux on, is all gone, and they might not see any of that ever again. This post that was posted in the Pokemon Brick Bronze wiki soon after its removal states how the community were feeling at the time. The Discord was described as in turmoil, and their player base as panicking, and all they could do for the time being was pray that Pokemon Brick Bronze would return. Then something started to happen. Soon after Lando64000, the developer behind Pokemon Brick Bronze and more games, announced that they would not be bringing Pokemon Brick Bronze back on a tweet, and he said it was gone forever, but he also stated that they would continue to work on games despite the huge setback, and what they were probably referring to at the time was what came to be Loomian Legacy, with their version of Pokemon with their own separate types, but we'll get back to that later. Now, at this stage, players had nothing. Pokemon Brick Bronze was gone. Lando confirmed it was never coming back, and there was no other game at this point to fit into the Pokemon Brick Bronze place, and nothing even really came close to it. Then something started to happen. Copies of Pokemon Brick Bronze that were somehow taken from the original game were uploaded to the platform so people could continue to play it, despite Pokemon's takedown of the game. Which, the earliest example I can find of this game is Pokemon Breeze, that I found via a YouTube video that was posted on the game 6 years ago, which is still 2018, so this is not long after the game was even banned, and this copy was actually released before Pokemon Brick Bronze was taken down, and it just gave you a ton of legendaries instead of normal Pokemon, which was the appeal for it, so people started flocking over to this game a bit. This version of Brick Bronze, as far as I can tell, has been deleted completely. I've tried looking everywhere for a Discord server or a website article or anything I can possibly can to see if this variant of Pokemon Brick Bronze is still around, and ultimately I gave up with the best information being a reply to a thread about Pokemon Breeze saying that the game had been deleted in 2021. Now, these copies filled the gap that Pokemon Brick Bronze left behind until July 20th, 2019. Over an entire year after the game's deletion from the Roblox platform, which was way too long, Loomian Legacy, the recreation of their taken down game Pokemon Brick Bronze, was made. Most of the players of the game that were originally playing it had already found a copy of the game and started playing that, or they found something entirely else new to play. But the developers were not to blame for this long gap, as they had started the entire of Pokemon Brick Bronze from scratch, and they made an entirely new game with an entire selection of Loomians that they created themselves, and they even made their own typing system for the game. And at first, when the game released, it wasn't actually looking too bad. It actually hit some decent numbers and was on the front page of Roblox for quite a while, but this is to be expected when the game instantly drops, and especially if Pokemon Brick Bronze being the game that came before it. And now on the platform, it struggles to get 1,000 players and normally sits around 1.5k, which is a shell of what Pokemon Brick Bronze used to be, even back in 2018 of Roblox, which was a time where Roblox probably had a ton less players than it does today. This game's fall off was fast and also interesting, as there was nothing really strikingly wrong with the game, and it was actually a really well put together and developed game, but in the end, none of it really mattered. Everyone just wants to play using characters they've known and loved their whole lives, like Charmander and Squirtle, and play the format they've been used to their whole lives, with the Pokemon competitive PvP they were just so used to before even touching Pokemon Brick Bronze itself. And it's not just about the games, but just about Pokemon, the franchise as a whole. People would clearly rather play with a game full of Pokemon rather than a game full of Loomians. And after Loomian Legacy went straight down in player count until it could easily be considered a dead game, the Pokemon Brick Bronze copies were growing stronger than ever. I would try and give a rough list of the biggest copies, but we would be here for a while. This playlist of Pokemon Brick Bronze copies which I found on YouTube contains over 20 copies of the game, and this covered them all in a singular year. He started this playlist about a year ago, and his most recent upload I think was 4 months ago. So he probably missed a bunch of old ones that were already taken down, which just shows the insane amount of these games that were going up and down constantly on Roblox. And even more than that, it shows the absolute insane demand for these games that the players had. Now, Roblox has always been harsh on these clones being uploaded to the platform, and they would constantly get taken down by Roblox. and around 2020 this started to change, but not in the way you think. Before 2019, most of these copies were very much for nostalgia, and they weren't very functional, and they would never save the data you had, so you probably had about a month before all your progress was gone. But in 2020 this started to change as developers started taking the original code from the game, fixing it up and actually developing the games a bit, and making these games entirely functional, and even adding to the games at times, and monetizing it in as many ways as possible. So one of the obscene ways they decided to monetize these games, which is in the biggest game that's currently out, is a roulette system that costs Robux to spin on, and you can win Pokemon, so you can effectively spend your Robux to buy Pokemon from these copies, which leads to many people gambling to an extent and spending more Robux than they really should on a copy of Pokemon Brick Bronze. Now, you're probably thinking about what I just said about all these clones getting removed from the platform, so this probably wasn't the best thing to spend on. And many players would probably be likely to avoid spending Robux on these copies. Well, not quite, as these developers had not only tweaked up the game to a working quality, but they also made it so whenever the game got taken down, within days the game would be fully back up and running under a new alias with all of the players' data intact from the last save of the game. Now, combine this with Discord servers these games created so their players could always find the game instantly and get right back to playing. These copies were basically becoming unstoppable, and there wasn't even really much Roblox could do about this, as I take them down every so often, just for them to get re-uploaded days later. The biggest clone so far has a Discord server with 464,000 members, which is utterly insane, and this is 4 times larger than the official Loomian Legacy Discord. And the copy of the game that's currently up, which is probably the smallest fraction of their game's total visits, is at 1.2 million visits. And the game status is clearly displayed on a channel so people always know where the game is available to be played, and if they need to hop on a new copy of the game. And honestly, the system is pretty much perfect and there's pretty much no flaws within it. But it doesn't just stop with the re-uploads and Discord servers, it actually gets a whole level smarter. These devs actually disguise the game at times as other games, so they aren't immediately taken down. And some of these copies have lasted upwards of 4 months, which for a banned game to survive 1/3 of a year to be re-uploaded probably 2 or 3 days later is absolutely wild. And the games from time to time even have fake games when you first load up the game until you interact with it or do something like hit a play button, then you get teleported to the Brick Bronze game, delaying Roblox from taking down these games, which is kind of genius, as it's making their games last insane amounts of times so they can build up more and more players, bringing more and more people into the Discord, so ultimately the game just keeps growing and growing, and at a normal rate, which should not be happening for a banned game. Now, the example I've been going over and over again on this video is the biggest copy, and this is the game that's uploaded or known as Project Bronze Forever, which reaches 12 times Loomian Legacy's concurrent player count alongside 4 times their total Discord server members on a banned copy of their own game, which is crazy. And I'm not here to talk about the morality of these copies, as the devs of Loomian Legacy and Brick Bronze have stated numerous times that they don't like it when their players play these copies, saying stuff like, "You may not realize it, but when you indulge in stolen copies of Brick Bronze in any way, you are mocking me." And I'm not going to provide anyone the links to anything this game has, but it's really not hard to find them due to Roblox's lack of enforcement against these games, and there's nothing I can really do to stop you. You are literally one search away from finding any of their search like socials or finding the actual game itself on the Roblox platform. And the only people with the authority to control if you play these copies or not is Roblox themselves, which they are failing to do. But bear in mind, if you do play these games and you are a big fan of the devs of Brick Bronze or Loomian Legacy, it does actually affect them. As you can see, Loomian Legacy is kind of dead. When you play these copies, you are basically feeding into their competitors, which is with their own game. So their own game is being stolen and then used against them to make their own game even smaller. Now, the current day we obviously have these copies which absolutely destroy Loomian Legacy when it comes to fans and player counts, but what about for the future of these games? Well, I saw a video from a guy called Lucky HD, and he goes over how these copies are going to be stopped once and for all by Roblox, but this just clearly isn't the case and hasn't been the case, as this video was 1 year ago, and he mostly goes over the fact that Roblox has sent out physical letters with the intent to sue over people developing sexual content on Roblox, and they do this by bypassing Roblox in a similar way that these Pokemon Brick Bronze copies do. But this is a whole different ball game, as sexual content on a game that's majority built for kids and advertising themselves towards kids is absolutely horrible for Roblox's image, and these copies don't do the same. And it's been almost 4 years and these games have still been going crazy on the platform, and Roblox is doing pretty much nothing to stop it. So you're probably thinking, well, that's good, Roblox can't stop them, so we're all going to play Pokemon Brick Bronze forever and live happily ever after, but that's definitely not the case. Recently, This Bronze Forever game has reached numbers that I don't even remember the original Pokemon Break Bronze hitting, and it currently has 12,000 people playing the game, which is just insane. And since Nintendo's takedown in 2018, I doubt they've looked at the game very much, as they know it's permanently banned from the platform. But if these copies keep on growing at the insane rates they are, it's probably going to become a big issue, as Nintendo might hear of this, and we might experience the 2018 situation all over again, but probably much worse, because these copies are a lot more sneaky and they're actually getting quite big. And Roblox will 100% have to step in, and they might start sending letters like the ones I showed you earlier, to the houses of the devs of Bronze Forever and other copies, which will ultimately, one way or another, permanently put an end to these copies, whether it's by taking legal action against the devs and owners of these copies, or if the threat just makes them give up with their attempts. Regardless, in the near future, it's highly likely that we're going to see something big happen one way or another.